What does it feel like to be a 34-year-old woman with no husband, no children, and no one who loves her? That's what my father said, standing with a glass of bourbon in hand right in the middle of our family's anniversary dinner. Laughter rippled across the table. My brothers smirked. Even my mother looked away. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "How does it feel knowing this failure is done paying your mortgage, your car, and your cable bill starting tomorrow?" The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. My name is Madeline Hayes. I'm 34, a regional CFO. And for the past 2 decades, I've quietly financed a family that has never once said thank you. Before I tell you how I ended up owning the house my father brags about, let me show you how it all began. They say family dinners are sacred. In our house, they were performance art. Every smile was rehearsed, every compliment coded in expectation, and every silence? A loaded weapon. That evening, we gathered in my Aunt Marjorie's colonial-style home in suburban Columbus, Ohio, a place where the hardwood floors gleamed like a showroom and the roast chicken smelled like a commercial. 20 people packed around the mahogany dining table that had hosted 30 years of holidays, baby showers, and forced civility. I hadn't been back in over a year, and the chairs somehow felt even smaller. Or maybe I just didn't shrink anymore. My parents sat at the head of the table, as always. My mother, Elaine, wore her usual pastel cardigan and anxious half-smile. Her hands fidgeted with napkins, with forks, with her bracelet, anything to distract from my father's growing mood. Charles Hayes, retired contractor and full-time patriarch, gripped his bourbon glass like it was a gavel. He loved his role, and tonight, he was in rare form. Across the table sat my 3 younger brothers, Daniel, Kyle, and Ryan, each surrounded by their wives, children, and that smug certainty that comes from believing you've fulfilled the script. Marry early. Pop out kids. Show up to Sunday service. Be normal. And then there was me, the oldest, the anomaly. No husband. No kids. No apology. I wore a navy blue blazer over a crisp cream blouse, classic, professional, and apparently threatening to everyone who hadn't left Ohio since graduation. I caught Daniel whisper something to his wife. She stifled a giggle. I pretended not to notice. The conversation around me swirled. Mortgage rates, Little League games, vacation plans to Myrtle Beach. No one asked about my work. No one mentioned the West Coast expansion project I'd just led. But they all knew. That was the game we pretend my success doesn't count because it doesn't fit their frame. Still, I smiled. I passed the potatoes. I answered politely when Aunt Marjorie asked if I was still working all the time. And I braced myself. Because I knew it was coming. You could always feel it when Dad was winding up. He'd go quiet, then sip his drink, then lean back just slightly like a man preparing to swing. My mother stiffened next to him. The same way she used to when I was 12, and he'd start criticizing my posture or my tone. Even after all these years, her body remembered before her mind did. Then it happened. His chair scraped against the wood floor as he stood. He raised his glass. And every fork in the room paused mid-air. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. The room hushed. To my firstborn. There it was. The spotlight. The build-up. I glanced at my mother. Her knuckles were white around her napkin. My father looked right at me, smirked, and said the line that would change everything. "To Madeline," my father said, raising his glass. "My firstborn." A few scattered clinks of cutlery, a few murmurs of forced cheers, followed. Everyone knew this wasn't a real toast. This was a setup. His eyes never left mine. His smirk widened. "Tell us, sweetheart," he said, voice smooth and loud. "What does it feel like to be 34 years old? No husband to warm your bed? No children to carry on your name? What does it feel like to be a woman who built a career and still ended up all alone?" The silence hit like a dropped plate. No one moved. No one spoke. Then laughter. My brother Kyle chuckled. Ryan followed, trying to mask it with a cough. Daniel leaned back, shaking his head as if I had failed some unspoken test. Their wives looked down at their plates. My mother closed her eyes like she'd been punched but still couldn't stand up. I sat still. My fork hovered midair, like I'd forgotten what to do with it. Inside me, something shattered but not in the way he expected. Because I didn't break. I woke up. I slowly placed my fork down. I reached for my wine glass, not to toast, but to steady my breath. Then I looked directly at him. Calm, quiet, clear. "Thanks for the toast, Dad," I said, my voice sharper than the steak knives on the table. "But since we're sharing feelings tonight, how does it feel knowing this failure?" I gestured to myself with an open palm. "We'll no longer be paying your mortgage, your car insurance, your utility bills, or the cable package you watch Fox News on, starting tomorrow?" Dead silence. My father's face went slack. For once, words failed him. 20 people sat frozen, mid-chew, mid-breath, mid-thought. I watched the expression on each face changes: shock, disbelief, some guilt, some fear. My mother covered her mouth with her napkin. Ryan's wife glanced at him, visibly confused. Even Daniel, always the slick one, couldn't quite keep the smirk from falling off his face. "You think I'm a failure because I don't fit your definition of success?" I continued, voice level, almost clinical. "But I've been paying to keep your kingdom from crumbling for over a decade. And I'm done." The room felt like it had lost all its oxygen. For 20 years, I'd been the silent scaffold holding up their perfect image, paying behind the scenes, helping in emergencies, smiling through dismissive comments about how a woman needs to settle down before it's too late. Tonight, the scaffold collapsed. I stood up slowly, letting the legs of my chair scrape the floor like a deliberate warning. My heart was thudding, but my voice remained even. "I hope you all enjoy dinner," I said, picking up my coat. "But I won't sit at a table where I'm only welcome as long as I keep paying the bill." Then I left. I walked straight through the dining room, past the confused children, the tense shoulders, and the legacy of a family that never saw me for who I was, only for what I could provide. The air outside was cold, crisp, and honest. And as I stood on the porch, I heard a voice behind me. Soft. It was Aunt Marjorie. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I invited you tonight because I knew he'd try to ask me for money again. I needed you to see it. Clearly." I nodded, stunned. It wasn't just a dinner. It was an intervention. As I drove home that night, the silence in my car was deafening. No radio. No phone calls. Just the steady rhythm of my tires on the road, and the flood of memories that refused to be silenced any longer. It started with a roof. I was 15. There was a leak above the hallway near the laundry room. My mom had been on the phone, whispering to a roofing company, voice trembling as she asked if they could do partial repairs. I knew they couldn't afford it. I had $268 saved in a shoebox under my bed, money I earned working at the local bakery every Saturday for nearly a year. That money was supposed to pay for the summer science camp at Ohio State. Instead, it went on the kitchen counter with a note that simply read, "For the roof." They never asked where it came from. They just used it. Science camp came and went without me. Then college. My acceptance to Northwestern came with a scholarship, but not enough to cover room and board. My father refused to co-sign a student loan, said he didn't believe in girls taking on debt they'd never repay. I quietly accepted a full ride from Ohio University instead, and took on 3 campus jobs to stay afloat. No one congratulated me. They just asked if I could still come home on weekends to help with Kyle's college applications. I was 24 when Daniel lost his job. His wife was 6 months pregnant. They were about to default on their rent. I drained my emergency savings to cover 3 months for them and bought them a used crib from Craigslist. I didn't tell anyone. They posted a picture of it on Facebook, thanking God's timing. God had nothing to do with it. At 27, my father needed a new truck for his construction side jobs. His credit was too damaged to lease. Guess whose name went on the paperwork? Mine. At 29, my mom was diagnosed with a minor heart condition. She didn't have full coverage for her prescriptions. I signed her up for my employer-sponsored family plan. She never acknowledged it. But when I once declined Sunday dinner because I was working late, she told everyone I was too selfish to even show up for family anymore. And at 32, when Kyle's wife wanted to take the kids to Disney World but couldn't afford it, I received a phone call that started with, "Maddie, you're always so responsible. Do you think you could help us just this once?" I paid for 5 round-trip tickets, a hotel suite, and 2-day park passes. They never sent a thank you. But they posted daily Instagram stories and tagged every ride, every character, every smile. I watched those stories from my office desk while eating leftovers out of a plastic container. Every time I got close to doing something for myself, saving for a condo, booking a vacation, upgrading my car, something came up. Someone needed help, and I was the reliable one. The strong one. The unmarried one with no real responsibilities. I became the family safety net, not because they asked, but because they expected. And that night, when my father stood and humiliated me in front of 20 people, that was the moment I realized. I wasn't a daughter, I was a service. And I was finally shutting it down. 3 days before that dinner, my phone lit up at 9:47 a.m. with a name I never wanted to see during work hours, Kyle Hayes. I stared at the screen for a moment. Calls from Kyle were never casual. Never just to check in or say hi. They were needs wrapped in charm requests disguised as catching up. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey Kyle, I've only got a few minutes. I'm heading into a budget review." "Hey Maddie," he said with that practiced enthusiasm he always used when he wanted something. "I'll be quick, I promise. Wow, I've been meaning to call you for a while. How's work? Still doing all that number magic?" I didn't respond to the flattery. I cut straight to it. "What do you need?" There was a pause, then a breath, then the ask. "So, you know that subscription box business Kendra and I started? The one for artisan pet products? We're this close to locking in a wholesale distributor. Huge opportunity. But the bank's giving us a hard time because of our debt-to-income ratio. Total red tape nonsense." I already knew where this was going. I closed my laptop. "We just need a little push to scale production. Just 50. You wouldn't even have to give it, just co-sign the loan. With your credit score, we'd be golden." "Seriously, Maddie, it's nothing for someone like you." I exhaled slowly. The audacity calling a 5-figure ask nothing, as if the money I earned wasn't fought for. As if the sacrifices I made to stay financially stable were irrelevant. "No," I said simply. "I can't do that, Kyle. My credit is tied up right now." There was a beat of silence. Then, his voice changed. "Wow, okay, so that's a no?" "It's a no. You know," he said, dropping the charm like a mask, "Dad was right about you. You've always been selfish. Sitting on all that money from your big career while the rest of us are trying to build something real. You don't even have a family to support. What the hell are you doing with it?" I felt something shift in me, like a bolt sliding into place. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "Goodbye, Kyle," and hung up. But the call didn't end there. It echoed. All day, his words followed me like a bad smell. Selfish. No family. What are you doing with it? I looked around my apartment. Neat, quiet, small. I looked at my calendar, back-to-back meetings, deadlines, client calls. I looked at the photo of me and my mom on my desk, from when I paid off her hospital bills. And I realized something. I had given so much of myself away that there was barely anything left that felt like mine. This wasn't just about money. This was about identity. I wasn't their daughter, their sister, their equal. I was their resource. That call didn't just irritate me. It woke me up. It cleared the fog. It was no longer about boundaries. It was about survival. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to fund another dream, cover another mistake, or accept another insult. The bank was closed. And the woman they thought they could always depend on was done being dependable. The silence, after my final words, stretched like a held breath. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stared at the people who had mistaken my generosity for obligation, my patience for passivity, my care for currency. My father blinked first. His cheeks flushed an angry red, not from embarrassment but from fury. "You ungrateful little girl," he spat, slamming his hand on the table. The glasses jumped. Silverware clattered. "After everything I've done for you? After all the years I put food on your plate, a roof over your head, this is how you repay me? In front of the family?" A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "You call this repayment?" I said, rising to my feet. "You raised me on guilt and silence, and when I started paying your bills, you didn't even notice because you believed it was your right." His mouth opened, but I didn't let him speak. "I've covered your mortgage for 8 years, Dad. I paid off the property taxes when you nearly lost the house in 2017. I refinanced your car loan under my name when your credit tanked. And I did it quietly. Out of love. Out of duty. But not anymore." I turned to my brothers, whose faces were quickly morphing from shock to defense. "Kyle," I said, "you called me 3 days ago to co-sign a 50-0 loan for a business idea involving dog treats and glitter bows. When I said no, you called me selfish. That's your version of family?" His mouth dropped open, but he said nothing. "Daniel," I continued, "remember when you lost your job and I covered your rent for 3 months? Those Disney World tickets you never thanked me for? You once told people it was a sponsor giveaway. That sponsor was me." No one spoke. Only my mother's quiet, stifled sobs filled the space. "You want to talk about disrespect?" I said, looking back at my father. "You humiliated me in front of everyone tonight, called me a failure. You think your words hurt me?" They freed me. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single silver key. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't falter. "This is the spare key to your house," I said, placing it gently on my dinner plate with a soft clink. "The house I've been keeping afloat for almost a decade. You can give it back to the bank now." Gasps. Actual gasps around the table. "Madeline," my mother finally choked out, "please, don't do this. Not here." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I spoke with unflinching truth. "Mom, it's already done. I've just been too afraid to say it, but I'm not afraid anymore." I picked up my coat, slung it over my shoulder, and looked around the table one last time. Not for approval. Not for guilt. Just to see them, truly see them as they were. People who had taken, assumed, dismissed, and forgotten. And now they would remember. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your punching bag. And I'm not your shame. With that, I turned and walked toward the door. Each step was a release, a shedding, a quiet revolution. And then, just before I stepped out into the night, someone followed. A hand touched my elbow. I turned. It was Aunt Marjorie, her face drawn but steady. "He was going to ask me for money again tonight," she whispered. "I invited you because I knew something had to break. I just didn't know if it would be you or him." I stared at her, stunned. And she gave me a sad smile. "You did the right thing, Madeline. You finally cut the cord." The pounding on my apartment door came just after 9:00 a.m. on Saturday. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the ceramic warm my palms as I walked calmly to the intercom. My heart beat steady, like I'd trained for this moment without realizing it. "Open this damn door, Madeline!" My father's voice, strained, angry echoed through the speaker. I pressed the button. "Come up." Let it happen, I told myself. Let it all unfold here, in my space, on my terms. I positioned myself behind my couch, not to hide but to create distance. In the center of my coffee table sat a manila folder, thick, heavy, waiting. The door rattled again. I opened it. My father pushed past me, rage radiating from his body like steam. Kyle trailed behind him, pale and twitchy, the swagger from the dinner table completely gone. "So this is where the princess lives now?" my father growled, spinning on his heel. "You think just because you make a little money, you can disrespect your family? Embarrass me? Your mother's in tears." I shut the door quietly behind them. "You want to talk about respect?" I said. "Let's." He stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. "You're going to call every company you cut off restart those payments. You're going to fix this, Madeline. You don't get to pull stunts and walk away." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just nodded toward the coffee table. "Before you keep shouting, Dad, maybe take a look at that folder." He glanced down, suspicious. Kyle moved closer. "What is this?" my father snapped. "Open it," I said evenly. With a huff, he yanked the folder open and stopped. Inside were 3 documents, legal, notarized, pristine. The first was a loan agreement from a subprime lender, dated 2015. The principal? 198,000. The reason? Gambling debts, and an emergency second mortgage taken out behind my mother's back. My father's face drained of color. The second was a foreclosure notice, dated 6 weeks after that loan, the house he called his about to be seized, a disaster averted, by me. And the third? A legally binding agreement, transferring the debt into my name paid with every cent I had in savings and a crushing personal loan I'd taken out at 25 years old. Kyle's voice cracked. "What is this? You told us you handled it. You said it was some contractor issue with the bank." My father's voice cracked too, but not from yelling this time. I didn't want anyone to know. It was temporary. I was going to fix it." "No," I said. "You weren't. You were going to lose the house. And I stepped in, quietly. You begged me not to tell anyone. You said it would ruin your reputation. You swore it was a one-time thing." I tapped the final page. "This document says otherwise." I turned to Kyle. "For the last 10 years, I've been the legal lien holder on that property. I bought the debt, paid it off, and I've had the right to foreclose on the house anytime I wanted." My father sat down slowly on the couch. He looked small, like a man aging by the minute. "But I didn't," I continued, "because Mom lives there, because I loved her, because I was scared. But I'm not scared anymore." Kyle's mouth opened, then shut again. His eyes flicked between me and the papers like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You're the owner," he finally whispered. "You own the house?" I nodded. My father buried his face in his hands. "I gave you every opportunity to be honest, Dad, to treat me like more than a wallet. Instead, you humiliated me, used me, and told people I was nothing. So, here's what's going to happen." I took a breath. "On Monday, I'm listing the house for sale. The original mortgage gets paid first. Then the money I invested plus interest comes back to me. Whatever's left, you, Daniel, Kyle, and Ryan can split it." "No," my father gasped, standing abruptly. "You can't. That house your mother." "Mom gets a choice," I said firmly. "She always has. She just forgot. I'll offer her a place to live with me. But you'll have to figure things out on your own." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was hollow. Defeated. I didn't enjoy the collapse. I didn't gloat. I just watched him announce so loud, so she realized that he was never the king of anything. He was just a man who borrowed pride on credit. And I had finally called in the debt. I knew the hardest part wouldn't be my father. It would be my mother. That evening, as the sun dipped behind my apartment building, I sat by the window, phone resting face down on the table. I hadn't heard from her since the dinner, since the detonation, until it rang. "Mom." I hesitated. My chest tightened. I picked up. "Madeline," she said, her voice thin and breathy, like she'd been crying. "They just got home. Your father went straight to the bedroom and slammed the door. Kyle didn't say a word." What did you do to him?" The assumption in her voice still cut deep, like I was the aggressor, the disruptor, the one who had started this. I didn't do anything to him, Mom, I said, as gently as I could. I just told the truth. The same truth you've helped me protect for 10 years. She sucked in a breath. Silent. Then broken. Oh, Maddie, she whispered. Tu didn't know it would come to this. I'm putting the house up for sale, I said plainly. The papers are already in motion. I'm also looking for a new place. A 2-bedroom. The second room is for you. Her breath hitched. No strings attached, I added. No conditions. Just a choice. Yours. There was a long pause. Then, through the quiet, I can't, Madeline. I can't just leave him. That's our home. That's your father. He has no one. No, Mom, I said, my voice thick. He made sure no one stayed. He didn't just abandon me. He abandoned you. He just made you stay. She didn't argue. I'm not asking you to hate him, I continued. I'm asking you to choose yourself, for once, to stop surviving and start living. I need to think, she said softly. I need to talk to him. I knew what that meant. She was going to try to fix it. Again? Okay, I said. The offer stands. I hung up, gently, and sat in that heavy quiet, the familiar one. The one where you brace for disappointment from the people you love most. She didn't call the next day, or the day after. I started searching for 1-bedroom apartments, told myself I was fine with her staying, that she'd never leave, that I could live with that. Until Monday night. She called again. Her voice wasn't the same. It was cold, steady, brittle like porcelain. I talked to him, she said. I told him what you said, that he needed to apologize, to admit what he did, that we were losing everything. I said nothing, just waited. He turned on me, she continued, her voice trembling, said it was all my fault, that I'd raised a selfish, disrespectful daughter, that I'd poisoned you with softness. My jaw clenched. He said if I had been stronger, he wouldn't have had to lie, wouldn't have lost the house, wouldn't have failed. Her words cracked, then steadied again. There's nothing left to fix, is there? I exhaled, quiet and full of grief. No, Mom, I said softly. There hasn't been, for a long time. Another pause. Then, when can we start looking at apartments? I closed my eyes. Let the tears come. But not out of sadness. Out of relief. Tomorrow, I said. We can start tomorrow. For the first time in my life, my mother had chosen me. Nosha had chosen herself. 8 months later, I stood on the balcony of our new apartment 17 floors above a city that finally felt like mine. The air was cool and clean. Autumn had painted the skyline in gold and crimson. For the first time in my adult life, I was breathing my own air. Behind me, the faint sound of humming drifted from the kitchen. It was my mother. She hummed when she was calm, when her hands were busy. I hadn't heard that sound since I was a child. The apartment wasn't extravagant, just 2 bedrooms, lots of sunlight, and shelves filled with imperfect pottery pieces she had started making in her new class. Each uneven bowl, each misshapen mug, a quiet declaration of freedom. We didn't talk about the past much. Not because we avoided it, but because we didn't need to. We'd both survived something. And now, we were learning to live. Some mornings, we cooked together in silence. Some afternoons, she read on the balcony while I worked. Some evenings, she'd pull out old photo boxes and we'd sit cross-legged on the rug, holding memories up to the light and deciding which ones were worth keeping. There was a picture of me at age 10, holding a trophy fish at the lake. I remember this, she said one night, smiling. Your dad told everyone at the barbecue that he taught you how to fish that day. I looked at the photo, then back at her. It was Uncle Ray, I said quietly. Dad wasn't even there. He was sleeping off a hangover in the truck. She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly. Yes, he was. It was a small moment. But it meant everything. We were no longer rewriting the past. We were finally telling the truth. The house sold faster than I expected. The proceeds came through cleanly mortgage settled. My 10-year investment returned with interest. I had the remaining balance divided evenly between my brothers. A formal letter from my attorney notified them. No calls, no drama. Kyle tried to email. A vague apology tucked inside a request for a short-term loan. I archived it without replying. My father disappeared into the quiet. Aunt Marjorie said he moved into a small apartment outside of town. No furniture, just old family photos on the walls like a museum of a life that had moved on without him. She said he still tells stories. Still pretends he's in control. But no one calls. Not even his sons. He finally got what he feared most. Irrelevance. Me? I got something better. Not revenge. Not applause. Not even closure, really. I got a future. One not built on silence or sacrifice. One where my name isn't just on checks but on the door, on the lease, on the legacy. I no longer live as a footnote in someone else's story. I'm writing my own now. And every chapter begins with this one truth. Love is not a transaction. And freedom is not something you're given. It's something you claim. Out loud, with both hands. And never, ever return.